Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today I got a bunch of 9.8 completed sales to go through, and it kind of seems like prices are stabilizing a little bit, which is encouraging. I think there's a couple books that you can point at that I've sort of noticed lower prices in the last month or so, so maybe some books are kind of bouncing up. And yeah, great list today. Just quite a few, somewhat underrated books in a 9.8, but pretty big sellers going for big money. So let's have a look here. The first one is X-Men 137 in a newsstand edition in a 9.8. You almost can't go wrong with kind of any book from this era of X-Men. Just a great era. This John Byrne, Terry Austin, and Chris Claremont era of X-Men books. This one is the Death of Phoenix. It sold in an auction for $561.99. The newsstand edition on this one. I did notice too in the completed listings there was a direct edition that had sold, I think it was about a month ago or so, for a little bit more. So I actually think this is a pretty good deal, yeah, for the newsstand edition of X-Men 137, selling for $561.99. Yeah, I think if you like that one. And it is pretty much a classic cover as well. Like, there's been a couple cover spoofs of this one. I think that's pretty much a price to aim for that one in a newsstand. The next one's a bit of an under-followed book too, but pretty awesome, I think. Absolutely one to consider. Fantastic Four 211. Looking pretty great in a 9.8 white pages. This is the first appearance of Terrax. I really like this cover too. Yeah, just nailed it on the cover. One of the better covers for sure from this era of Fantastic Four. This one sold for $686.76. Yeah, I didn't look on the census this morning for these ones, but I'd imagine there's probably not too many of these. And this one did look really crisp. Yeah, great looking white pages. You can kind of tell just from the nice scans this one sold. Had a nice scan. So Fantastic Four 211. I'm not too sure of the price history on this one, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think too many of them. I don't see this one sell too often in a fire sale auction. But yeah, one going for $686.76. The next one was just really cool. Yeah, I was watching this one and kind of was tempted, to be honest, but it's super obscure. It's an Inspector Gadget Summer Special. This is a one-shot. It was in a 9.8 white pages. I believe it's a magazine size as well. But this is the first appearance of Inspector Gadget. And I don't know if anyone out there watched Inspector Gadget growing up. I certainly did. Yeah, I definitely liked that cartoon when I was a kid. This one sold for $300. Yeah, again, I didn't look up the census for these ones this morning, but I'd imagine there can't be a lot of these. And if you are a big Inspector Gadget fan, I think right around $300 for this summer special Inspector Gadget is probably a price to aim for. Yeah, certainly if you're an Inspector Gadget fan, this is the one to get. First appearance on this book. But yeah, really cool one that I don't think I'd ever saw this book before, yeah, to be honest. So yeah, it was a cool one that I was watching. And yeah, from the time I watched it, it pretty much sold in like 4 or 5 days. So yeah, I doubt there's too many of those on the census. So a pretty great collector item there for Inspector Gadget fans. Next one's a cool one. Amazing Spider-Man #4, the variant edition though, when Cindy Moon becomes Silk. This is a pretty cool one to get. It's absolutely cooled down so much from during the pandemic. I'm pretty sure at one point they were about 1,000, maybe even a little bit over. This one, the variant edition, selling for $414. Yeah, I think on this one, if you can get it a little under $400 possibly, it's a pretty great buy. I think the thing about this one is Amazing Spider-Man 4 in the first print, there's a ton of them in a 9.8 on the census. So it kind of makes sense to go after the variant on this one. Yeah, you kind of got the silhouette of Cindy Moon as Silk on the cover for this one. And yeah, in some ways you almost can't go wrong with like a different version of Spider-Man, this version being Silk. Maybe there's some potential there. Certainly if she kind of came out, I think there's been off and on rumors like maybe they're going to make a Silk show or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think it's probably best to kind of go after the variant in this one with there being so many 9.8s in that first print. So $414 this one sold for Yeah, maybe right around 400, I think, is the price to aim for on Amazing Spider-Man 4 in the variant in a 9.8 white pages. Next one's a pretty cool one for Wolverine fans, kind of under the radar. Wolverine version 3, number 66, the first Old Man Logan storyline. This is a pretty cool one that's affordable for Wolverine fans, I think. This one sold for $122.16. You know, I want to say in the last 6 months or so, I might have saw this go a little closer to 100, but you know, $122.16 is not too much over 100. I think that's pretty much a price target to aim for. Yeah, a cool one that is a bit under the radar, but for Wolverine fans, one worth considering. Yeah, and a price to aim for, I think, right around 120, we'll call it, on a Wolverine 66 in a 9.8. So next one is a book I really like to recommend. A great Batman one, I think. It's Batman 436. The first appearance of Tim Drake. George Perez cover on this one. Yeah, lots to like about this one. Looks pretty good on the census too for a you know, pretty affordable book with a big first appearance. I think this one it shows a lot of value, and sold in an auction for $181. Pretty decent price. Yeah, I think I've saw them go like a little bit lower recently, but in the last 6 to 12 months they were absolutely over 200. Like, let's say 6 to 12 months ago. So it's cooled down a little bit. I've saw them go a little lower at times, but yeah, for a direct edition, 181, still a really solid deal for this one. And I do think it's a little bit undervalued. Big first appearance, looks good on the census. Yeah, this is just a Batman one to target if you're looking for maybe a bit of an undervalued Batman 9.8. I have this one in the CBCS 9.8, but kind of would still want a CGC actually. You know, maybe I kind of keep my eye out for the newsstand on this one, which you hardly ever see. That would be a really cool one. I'd imagine the newsstands probably get around $300 in the Batman 436. If you'd ever saw one in a 9.8, I'd probably be willing to pay around $300. But 181, I think, is a price to aim for Batman 436, 9.8 white pages. Next one, a real classic one, getting into the 70s here. Can't say I really saw this book sell before, but a really cool one, I thought. Captain America 230 in a 9.8 white pages with this classic Hulk cover, kind of smashing the cap shield. Sold for $454. Yeah, so I think this is kind of a non-key, but just one of those covers that collectors just go right after. You know, you almost can't go wrong with like some of the Avengers kind of duking it out, you know, whether it's Hulk and Captain America or Hulk and Thor or something like that. So pretty classic cover on this one. Captain America 230. Looking great too. Yeah, had good scans. I'll probably use the picture. Looking pretty great in a 9.8 white pages for $454. I'm not too sure the price history on that one, but yeah, one did sell for $454 in an auction. Next one is Infinity Gauntlet #1 in a direct edition. Pretty great one. Early 90s though. There's a ton of them on the census, but you know, this one seems to be about this price for like a really long time. $177.50 it sold for. I feel like, you know, with a ton of them out there, this might even be a bit of an overpay. You know, I remember some going for under $150 more recently in this direct edition. People go after the newsstand edition in this one, you know, pretty hard. Early 90s keys, any early 90s key, the newsstands are going to be pretty heavily coveted over the direct edition. So I probably would recommend the newsstand edition, which I bet is probably about $225 or so right now. And yeah, on this one in the direct, I'd probably aim for under $150 or right around $150. I feel like $177.50, maybe just a bit of an overpay, but you know, maybe some books bouncing here, hopefully. So maybe that's happening on the Infinity Gauntlet #1. Next one, I do have, brought it out, a Amazing Spider-Man 607, like one of the classic J. Scott Campbell Black Cat covers. I think it's one of his original ones. He's kind of had quite a bit of Black Cat covers since then that are like variants of newer comic books, but this is pretty much the original and super sexy, I think. Definitely one. I'm pretty sure I picked mine up kind of a little bit before pre-pandemic. Just over, it might have been under, yeah, it might have been like 190 or so. And I did see once, and this one had sold in an auction for $247.50. Yeah, and I think this one's absolutely one to target because, you know, sometimes you see some of these like other variants, and even if they're like a 1 for 100 variant or something like that, in some of the books I'd come out in like 2020 or 2018 or something like that of a J. Scott Campbell Black Cat cover. They go for pretty big money, like it's like 175 or, you know, in that sort of range. I would absolutely kind of go for this one over all those other J. Scott Campbell Black Cat covers. This one just as hot, and it's kind of the original. And yeah, you kind of get the classic Amazing Spider-Man trade dress. So lots to like about an Amazing Spider-Man 607 going for $247.50. You might even be able to aim kind of, you know, 225, maybe a little closer to 200 for this one. Saw a Batman Vengeance of Bane sell in a 9.8 for $320. And there's been a couple that had sold for kind of $290 in an auction in the last month. So maybe this one's just bouncing up a little bit. Although that is kind of in that fair value range. I think, you know, $290 up to $325 would be kind of the range on this one right now. But yeah, to be honest, at that range, I really like this one. Origin and first appearance of Bane, especially if you're a huge Batman fan. I think this one's just a little bit undervalued right now. Yeah, this is a big first appearance in the modern age for Batman. And yeah, totally worth $320, or maybe get lucky, you get it closer to $290. I think this one's undervalued, Vengeance of Bane, in a 9.8 white pages. Next one, a pretty cool one to see sell. A Venom 3 in the third printing, the first full appearance of Null. This is a book that got really hot during the pandemic as well. I think they were like $700 or $800 at one point there. But always felt this was going to cool down because, like, you know, it was the pandemic mixed with this one being a new comic book and the Null character being so popular right off the get-go. You kind of knew in a few years it was going to cool down. This is one I've held off on because I did kind of want it, to be honest. Just a great looking cover on the cover. Yeah, I think it's a Ryan Stegman cover, if I'm remembering correctly. Selling for $285 in an auction. Yeah, that's a pretty decent price, I think. They had, you know, they were really high during the pandemic, and then they kind of came down to sort of $375 to $400 for a good while. That would have been about a year ago, though. So I think slowly but surely it's just kind of come down a little bit more. $285, probably a price to aim for. Maybe you get it a little closer to $250. Yeah, you know, with like a Vengeance of Bane book going around that $285 range at times. I'd rather have a Vengeance of Bane, to be honest. But so maybe for a Venom 3 third print you can aim a little closer to $250, but wouldn't blame me if you got in there at $285. At least you didn't buy at like $700 or $800 during the pandemic on that one. If you know, wanted to target this one right now. Yeah, so the Venom 3 third print is kind of the one to get to. Yeah, I just really like the cover for first full appearance of Null, selling for $285. Next one's a pretty big 80s key, DC key, an Omega Man number 3, first appearance of Lobo, selling for $265. This one, you know, if you're a big Lobo fan, is absolutely the one to get. In a 9.8, it's not a very tough 9.8. Yeah, I remember, you know, noticing this one, and, you know, I like Lobo, and I was maybe considering this one, but it just wasn't a tough high-grade book for a 1980s book. But if you are a huge Lobo fan, it's the one to get. I think $265 is pretty much right in that range of a price to aim for an Omega Man number 3. And last one is probably a little bit more of a speculative one that you can be a little patient on right now, but it is still coming down in price from about a year ago prices. It's Kanan the Last Padawan number 6. The first full appearance of like Ezra Bridger and Sabine Wren and Hera Syndulla, and kind of there's a whole gang of Clone Wars characters. This is the first full appearance of those characters. And one selling for $255. Yeah, so this was one that, you know, during the speculation in the pandemic, it was like $700 at one point. Kind of cooled down in that $400 to $500 range for a good while. That was probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. Yeah, you know, similar story to that Venom 3 third print. It was just really hot during the pandemic. Slowly but surely, just continuing to come down in price. This one selling at $255. So you're still, you know, that Ahsoka show's out. I think Sabine Wren's in that show. So you might even be able to be just a little bit more patient on this one, and maybe in 6 to 12 months you aim for 225 or right around 200 or so. Might be doable on this one over time. But I do really like this cover. Yeah, great cover. Lots of big first appearances as a Star Wars fan. So this would probably be one, I almost wouldn't blame you if you got in there right now at around 220 or 255. But you might be able to just be a little more patient and get it near 225 or in the 200 range around there. At that point, I think it would be a great buy. Yeah, like, you've waited, things have cooled down. Still a lot of great first appearances in this one, or first full appearances, and an awesome cover. So there's still a lot to like about this one. Yeah, one selling right now for $255 in a 9.8 white pages. Okay, that's it. Just a nice little list of some pretty great books. Yeah, I think it was, especially that like Captain America 230. I hadn't saw that one sell very often. That Inspector Gadget is a complete kind of ghost that I've never saw before, but thought was so cool. Fantastic Four 211, a great cover, pretty big underrated villain first appearance. So yeah, a lot to think about on the list today, and hopefully, like I said, there are a few books that I've noticed lower prices in the last month or so, and seems like a few of these auction prices were maybe 10 or 15% higher than those lower prices. So hopefully, yeah, the 9.8 market is just stabilizing a little bit. Okay, we'll leave it at that though. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.